There's a particular teaching of the Buddha that ever since I learned about it, maybe some 30 years ago or so, I've ignored it. And even though it has a very central place, the Buddha got organized his practices in the mind states that develop as you practice were organized into a list called the 37 Wings of Awakening. So the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 5 faculties, the 7 factors of awakening, the Eightfold Path. There's like these list of lists. They add up to 37. And there's a list of 4 called the 4, sometimes it's translated into English as the 4 roads to spiritual power or psychic power. The word is Iti. I think maybe in Sanskrit it's Siddhi, but in Nepali it's Iti. And it's a little bit strange, the formulation of it. And it's never clear and there's no discussion about it. And so what does this mean? And it has this word Iti, which means psychic power. And I just kind of like, this is too much to handle for me. And then last week I read an article by a wonderful colleague of mine, wonderful teacher in our tradition named Ruth King. And this article, she explained it in a very ordinary, she denatured it or demythologized it or made it ordinary, made it accessible. I said, wow, this is fantastic. I loved it. And she did what the Buddha did with things in his own time. He would take these wonderfully supernatural or psychic power ideas that existed back in those times, and he would regularly say, oh yes, we do that too, but let me tell you how we do it. And inevitably what he did was he kind of made it ordinary. And so this, something that was ordinary that human beings can do rather than some of the more kind of supernatural dimensions that sometimes these existed in his time. And so he already had a custom of doing that. And so when I saw Ruth King do it, I said, oh. So I was a little bit inspired by her, a little bit borrowing from her way of doing it. I'm going to offer my take on these 4. And sometimes they're called 4 practices or 4 roads to success, any kind of success. And any endeavor that you want to do in life, no matter what it is, to include these 4 approaches to doing them can help you be successful in what you do. And apply it to Dharma practice, I think it's particularly significant as a support, as an aid, as to offer kind of some power or some strength to your success as a meditation practitioner or Dharma practitioner. And these 4 roads to power are, some people call it power to success, whatever it might be, and are the desire, effort, thinking about things, thought, and investigation. It's kind of a very rough translation of these. And so the first one is desire. And what's nice about these 4 is that it's very easy to listen to Dharma teachers like me and hear somehow the opposite idea. That like you're not supposed to have desire in Buddhism, that you're not supposed to make kind of strong effort, you're supposed to be kind of chill and relax. And you're not supposed to be thinking in meditation, so thinking is out, that thinking is bad. And that, I don't know about investigation maybe, but here the Buddha puts kind of at center of the stage the idea of desire. And I like to think of it as Dharma desire, dharmic desire. And the word for desire is chanda. And this is important because the problematic forms of desire, the Buddha has different words for it. Tanha, for example, it literally means thirst. This is a kind of desire that's considered to be a source of suffering, that is suffering, to be kind of the compulsive desire. That really it's thirst. It's not any old desire. And so the word chanda is an umbrella term for all forms of desire, but in this list it's kind of dharmic desire, desires that have a quality. What makes them dharmic, one of the things, is that there's no clinging involved with them. Clinging is a source of suffering. Can there be desires without any clinging? And can there be desires that are for the Dharma, for practice, for liberation, for compassion? Yes, the answer is, of course. And the Buddha talks about marshaling that kind of desire, standing behind it, gathering it together and having it be strong for you. And so if you want to have a success in what you do, become clear about your desire. Sometimes people emphasize having really clear about intention. But intention and desire, I think are overlap quite a bit. Just intention seems, more inspiring. It's more sophisticated maybe. Or intention is, it doesn't quite feel like desire, which you're not supposed to have. But we're resurrecting the word desire here in a useful way, in an important way. You have to want something. And if you don't want something, why would you do it? Why would you pursue it? Why would you engage? You have to want to come to IMC. I don't think any of you, probably none of you, just happened to be walking down the sidewalk and someone pushed you in. You have to want to be. You have to want to be here. Something has to bring you. And sit down to meditate. On a regular basis, there has to be a desire for it. How to have that desire be without clinging is the art. How to have the desire without compulsion, without expectation, without being attached to results, and is part of the art of learning how to hold desire, but still to be clear about the desire, to be clear about the intention. I spend a good part of my Dharma life reflecting on intention. And I would ask the question regularly to myself, what's my deepest intention here? Someone else, my teacher might ask, or practitioner might ask, what's the heart's deepest wish? What does your heart most want? And this idea of what the heart most wants, what's the deepest wish, means to go through the layers underneath the conceit, underneath our fear, underneath our greed, underneath our, all these layers of places that are not really at the heart. But the question kind of presupposes that there's something very significant, beautiful, wonderful, a treasure to be found, as you can get deep enough to go to the heart's, the deepest place within. That there's something really to honor and respect and to maybe be guided by. So this idea of, once you look at, bring desire to the table means reflect on desire, think about it, be clear about it. Don't just take the first desire that comes along, but, drop down and what is it you really want? And a fascinating exercise is if what you most want is something which is stated in the negative. I want to be free of fear. That's wonderful. But if it's in the negative, it's something what you don't want, then ask the question, if I could have that, what do I want then? So if there was no fear, what then is my heart's deepest wish? And that might kind of bring you to a deeper level underneath it. And that might also change your relationship with the fear, for example. When you realize there's a deeper thing that's your heart's call, the calling of your heart. The second of these 4 practices for success is, the Pali word is virya, V-I-R-I-Y-A. And it is a word that implies a lot of strength. It's associated with the word vira, which means hero. So some people like to translate it as courageous effort. So there's a kind of oomph. So it isn't like, easygoing. It isn't like, again, here, it's not all about being chilled. These Buddhists are supposed to be calm and easygoing and relaxed. I think that's nice. Maybe it's true, kind of. But it doesn't mean that we also don't make a lot of effort, and serious effort. And, this is important. In this world of ours, for many of us, not everyone in the world, but many people in our kind of neck of the woods, there's a lot of great things to do. There's so much. We almost we have like too many wonderful things to do, too many good causes to be involved in, too many recreation opportunities, too many Netflix movies, too much, and then there's a kind of neurosis of trying to have it all. Or if you're not up to speed, then you go to the block party and you're kind of like, not holding your own in the conversations. You're supposed to know something about everything. But a wise life that really kind of looks carefully at desires, what you most want, is going to start whittling away the things that get in the way of going deep, going seriously with what's most important. If you want to live your life skimming the surface of all these things, that's maybe a little bit unfortunate when you want to go deep. And that's what Dharma practice is possible, is to really, if this is important for you, really do it. Put effort into it. Make energy to it. Don't expect to just kind of like, there's something called book stand Buddhists. The people who just, read little Dharma books in the evening before going to sleep or something. And I don't want to knock the importance of that. That's a wonderful thing by itself. But if that's all you do, then it's like reading the menu all the time. You go to the restaurant. This is a great restaurant, and all you do is ever do is read the menu, and you never order the food. So, so if you just read Dharma books, it's like it's just a menu kind of. So you have to engage in the meal. You have to eat it. So you have to make effort. And then this word virya is such a strong word. It kind of means courageous effort. And so what does that mean for you? I just love the word courage in French. Comes from the word heart. So what's the heart's deepest wish? Number one. Now, what's the heart's kind of wholehearted engagement in what you're doing? To be wholehearted. And don't be afraid of making effort. Don't be afraid of being wholehearted. The art of it, though, is what is dharmic effort. Dharmic effort is effort which is done without conceit. Conceit is where we bring ourselves along, measure ourselves. I'm failing. I have to do better. I have to get a badge for what I do, and be able to show at the block party, how great I am in my effort and how I succeeded. And mostly Dharma practice is kind of like baseball, where baseball batters mostly fail. I think, how many times does your mind fall off the breathing when you're in meditation and go off into thinking about it? I mean, probably baseball players have better success than we do. But this Dharma effort has nothing. You don't measure it. The conceit of success and failure, and get caught in the kind of. What's important is the engagement. How we engage wholeheartedly, without strain, without measuring ourselves, without kind of the ordinary kind of conceits of being successful and being a failure. These don't really apply here, but rather what really applies is the wholehearted application, and you're doing the best we can. That's what carries the day. The third of these four is the word is citta, C-I-T-T-A, that's usually translated as mind. But citta in the ancient Pali language can also mean thought, thinking by itself. Sometimes scholars who study it think that citta is the thinking mind, as opposed to the whole mind. But in any case, here, to think of it as thinking, and that is, have desire, make the effort, but think about it. Spend time do this in a considered way. Don't just be blind and thoughtless and just, I'm supposed to do it because I'm supposed to do it. Reflect and contemplate and think and have conversations with friends and stretch your mind to kind of, so you can do it in a way that's more intelligent, better informed, better considered. Sometimes people get the impression that with meditation, the idea is to not think at all, and therefore I'm not supposed to think in my life. I think that learning how to think well, is an art that we all should learn. Learning how to spend time, even going to the community college and taking a class in critical thinking skills is a good idea. And just really learn how we make mistakes in our cognitive understanding of things, because we make leaps, we make assumptions, we believe things that shouldn't be believed automatically. We don't learn to question and look and what's going on here. So learning the art of thinking. So if you want to do something well, really consider your desire, make the effort, and think about it well. And then the fourth one is, and one of the ways to think about it well, a kind of a guideline for it, is as you think about things, think about it in a way that makes you more peaceful. So track how you're thinking. And if thinking is stirring you up, making you anxious or making you whatever, then it's not only what you think, but how you think that's important. And so see if you can adjust how you're thinking so that the thinking itself starts to kind of encourage a calmness, a peacefulness, an ease, rather than the opposite. The fourth of these roads to success is, I called it before, investigation. And this goes along with this, and how I understand it is that when you engage and do it in a thoughtful way, you want to learn from what you're doing. So this is called, in some circles, it's called action reflection. You act, and then you reflect about what you just did. And from a Dharma point of view, it's often reflecting on what are the consequences of what I do. Did this work out? What was the impact of this? Am I better off because I did this, or am I worse off? Did I add? Am I more tense now, or I feel more alive and vital and relaxed now? So we want to track ourselves and monitor ourselves, and learn from our mistakes, learn from our successes, learn from what works and doesn't work. And that takes time to reflect and to investigate, to consider, to evaluate how it's going as we're doing it. And so this idea of having a sense of the consequences is central to the teachings of the Buddha. He was a consequentialist. He was regularly and constantly looking at, describing what we do from the point of view of the consequences it has. So consequences means you have to think about it a little bit. You have to reflect. You have to investigate. You have to track what's happening here. And so, why this is quite unfortunate and why it's a drag to hear it for some of you is that it's work. You have to give yourself time for it. And you have important things to do, right? Like, I won't go through the list. And it is work. But it's work that leads to rest. Work that leads to the mind being de-stressed. We have to engage something. And it's work that maybe becomes rejuvenating, vital, welcoming, and until we can reclaim the word work to be wonderful, as opposed to work being discouraging. I have to do more work. Again, more work. I think some people in English, the word work is not a welcomed word. But I think if we learn how to do all this well, I think becomes more and more welcome because we feel the benefits. It feels invigorating or vitalizing. And we start discovering through Dharma practice this whole process of desire, engagement, reflection, and evaluation feels more and more like second nature. It's almost as if it's kind of what the heart does if we get out of the way well enough. If we have a clear sense of a desire that is healthy and maybe it almost feels natural to have, then the rest can follow almost as if it's natural. And it doesn't feel like work after a while, it just feels like this is what life is, this is what we do. For some people, what seems like natural and who we are and what we do is be neurotic. Because that's the habits that we've formed and created and all that, and fear and anxiety and all kinds of things become second nature because we repeated it so much. And it's inconceivable that it can be different. It can be different. We can transform ourselves and change. We can develop other skills and ways of being that become second nature. And one of the perspectives for understanding how to do this, is these 4 roads, practices for success, and which you can apply to almost anything you want to do in life. But in Dharma practice, we apply it to our practice. So you might try it this week. You might try to maybe, you could take one of the 4, one a day for 4 days. And just kind of write it down on a piece of paper, the word, and put it on your, a few sticky notes, put it on your wheel of your steering wheel of your car, or your mirror, or someplace where you are on your phone. That's the place. And so a day on desire, Dharma desire. A day on effort, Dharma effort, courageous effort. A day on consideration, reflection, thinking about it, Dharma thinking. And a day on evaluation, looking at the consequences, considering it. And you spend time with this and see if it, get a hang of it, get a sense of it, learn how to develop it, learn how to make it an art form or a skill or a craft that you've developed, and so it becomes easy. It doesn't become doesn't become this like heavy work. It becomes vitalizing work, if you call it work. So, what are your thoughts about this? Any questions? Anything you want to be clarify, or do you have any protests? Anything?
So it feels like almost, when I think about this, I need to start with the 4th one first. Because that kind of leads to, the investigation feels like to uncover the things first.
Fantastic. I think that's great, because what that means is you're going to be looking at the consequences of how you're living your life now. And what you might discover might inform how you go forward and what desires you want to have.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Starting with the last one.
I just want to make a simple observation. The comment that lady made there reminds me of the circle that you have. You investigate, you form a desire, you put a very sincere effort into the work ahead to improve, and then you basically evaluate and reflect, and then circle goes around and around.
Very nice, yeah. It's a circle, it's a spiral, come around and around, and it keeps developing and growing. Yes, that's very nice idea. Yes, in the other hall.
It's okay.
Oh,
it's a race.
That's not very dharmic.
It's the effort.
I really appreciated the clarity around desire, around cultivating wholesome desire. Because for me, I've always been very driven. And I think for a long time in my practice, I kept thinking that that was something I kind of needed to get rid of or not be so involved with. So when you described desire without clinging or greed or aversion, that really landed for me. Wholesome desire.
Agree. Wholesome desire, yes. And it can be strong. It can be something we put a lot of effort into. And, it makes, that really dedicated ourselves. Someone might think, wow, that person's putting a lot of effort. I wonder if that person's too attached. And they ask you, and you say, no. I just have a strong desire, and I have lots of energy for this, and I've given myself over to it. And so it's a beautiful thing to do. Sometimes I have sometimes the aspiration to, I say that I'm a wannabe obsessive. Because I really like engaging and doing, and I just want to have sometimes more time to just give myself over to one thing for a while. So it's a beautiful thing just to do one thing, and sometimes I feel nourished by just doing one thing for a while and just really give myself over. And there's a kind of harmony that sets in my system when I just really spend time with one activity. So yeah.
I appreciate very much your wisdom today. Thank you, thank you. And it made me think about my own practice in the practice of living in that fashion, which is for me mindfulness for the most part. And what came to mind was Tara Brach's RAIN. RAIN, do you know that
Yes,
acronym?
yes,
okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to speak it just because I think it's so applicable. And RAIN stands, look at that. RAIN stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture, which the essence of that is compassion, self-compassion. And I bring it up because if I stopped with the 4 roads that you just shared, and I have so very much to learn, I am a beginner. The question I sat with was, well, as I investigate, what do I do with all the emotions? Because here I am in my human body facing my habitual ways of being that may be problematic or may not be. And what do we do with that? And that's what made me think of Tara, because the only thing I can think of to do with that is when they arise, to let them be there and love myself through it, right? Because inevitably there are things that come up that take me away from that space that you just described, which I do know and experience, but I certainly must practice to be there as much as possible. So thank you for the validation
Thank you.
of it.
That was easy.
Earlier in your talk, Gil, you talked about how you have to, the Buddha talked about clearing the path before you can see more deeply. For me, that took about 15 years of meditation retreats and the Dedicated Practitioners Program. That gave me the forum in which to do what you're talking about. What I know about myself is without a lot of support, I just don't have the discipline. I can't. I have the idea that I want to do these things, but in daily life, unless I put myself in some kind of a program, I don't stay with it.
That's fantastic. So you just, in some ways, we can kind of evaluate what you just said from this point of view of the teachings. You certainly have a desire. As you reflect and look at yourself, and you find it's difficult to do it alone. And so then, so you see it doing alone, the consequence of doing alone is you don't do it. And so, but you still have this desire, so what's the right effort? How to go forward with this? And so for you, maybe it's to do it in community, to make sure you have community. And then you do it in community, and you find, oh yeah, that works. I'll do more of it. So that would be a simple example of using these four to, to address what you're addressing. But you're already doing this, I think. You just didn't have these categories to put them into. And then you might do it for another 15 years or something.
Probably take that for me.
And then at some point you might discover, this is nice, but I think I should, I see the consequence has been good, and something might occur to you and say, maybe I should try an experiment, because a lot of the Dharma practice is good to think of it as an experiment. Let me try an experiment. Let me see what it's like now to practice alone. Let me do a self-retreat. Let me go off someplace for 4 days by myself and see if I can do a retreat without any support from anybody else. And because I've been practicing for so long. And then you find, this is hard. But maybe I have to find the discipline inside now and not to rely on the group to support me. And I think this is the next step for my growth. And that's what happened to me, that very thing. I wasn't planning on it. I kind of stumbled into it. I'd done all my retreats and all my practice in Zen, where it's all group practice. And then I was introduced to this Vipassana practice in Thailand. And the abbot at the monastery said, go out there at the little hut at the end of the monastery, overlooking the rice fields, and stay there by yourself and practice all day and then come see me tomorrow. So I went out there to do it, and I realized, wait a minute, I've never practiced all day alone. And I said, this is I have to call on something inside of me I never called on before. I called it discipline then, but this is an inner motivation and so that became a growing edge for me. So I'm agreeing with you. I just wanted to say, at some point you might also find as you do what you most supportive for you, you might find that the question will come: should I experiment in a different way? Am I ready for an experiment?
That's so helpful. I really don't have a group in which to practice now. I probably need that. The idea of doing something alone scares me, but it intrigues me too.
Fantastic. So then apply these 4 steps to practicing alone. What's desire really fuels it or animates it in a good way? What would be a good desire? What's the importance of it? What are you really trying to do in a deep way? And then what's the right effort? And then think about it for a while. Until you really kind of get clear about what's all it involves. And then when you do it, start doing the feedback loop of action reflection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's kind of a appropriate topic because I'm actually I think you and I had a discussion. I was looking for peace and safety, and I didn't have it for a little bit. So I've actually decided to go into self-retreat for 3 weeks prior to going into 1 week retreat with you in person. So I did it 2 days straight, Friday and Saturday, about 6 hours straight. And the way I kind of handled it was having dharmic, the day I woke up, and as I was approaching it, I was choosing the emotion or topics or dharmic idea that calls to me, and listening to your talk, and then having a meditation and listening to your talk and meditation, and I was able to go through that 5 to 6 hours, and I found incredible safety and peace just within me, knowing that I have some sensitive issue that I'm dealing with, and emotion. And what would you think? Because for me, this is how I'm approaching. I'm in a private retreat with you, whom I feel safe, and I'm gonna go find myself the safety that I can create. Because ultimately, the fears or the anxiety or the strong emotion that I have, I really do need to take care of it myself, and I think I need to find it within me.
Yes.
To develop it. So what would you recommend? And then the way I was thinking about it is, when I didn't want to get out of my home, I could reframe it. I need to take care of my mind. I need to take care of my body. They need to relax. So I'm doing this for me. So what would you do to prepare? I don't think I'm just gonna keep this way until I get to the in-person retreat without too much expectation.
Yeah.
But is there any other thing you could recommend within
A
it?
couple of things occurred to me. One is it's wonderful what you described, that part of the action reflection, thinking about what you've done, is that you might, as you reflect what you did and seeing the benefits of what you've done, let it support or nourish your confidence, your
Okay.
self-confidence. That I can do this, so that I can do this in certain ways, and so that's one. And the other is when you come to the retreat center, you have a variety of options of how to practice there. And if you found that it was beneficial to explore the edges of practicing alone, you might try, even at the retreat, to do some of the meditations in your room,
Okay.
where you're alone, and see if that some of what you've been learning the last few days benefits you, and you can carry it with you there, and see, and you evaluate, how is this working in the context of practicing in silence with other people? Is this making me feel less safe or more safe to have spent some time alone?
Okay, and then during the next 3 weeks, I'm going into intensive, continuously doing maybe not 6 hours a day, maybe 3 to 4 hours, just going into deeper and deeper and deeper. I'm kind of doing the same thing that I had done in the past when I go in a 1 week retreat, where I did this intensive retreat, and it became intensive sessions for myself. It became much more meaningful
Great.
when I get there.
That's great.
So
Yeah.
okay.
So this is wonderful, but keep reflecting on how it's going.
Okay.
Learn from how it's going. Evaluate. Study yourself carefully. And some days it might work really well, but we have all these emotional ups and downs in our life, right? So you're tracking yourself, and you might say, "Oh, today is a day to really do something different," because I woke up kind of feeling pretty vulnerable. So I think I better, just read a book. Okay, so thank you all for being here and coming. And I invite any of you who want to meet me in the parking lot. If you want to pull a chair out from the folding chair out from the cabinets just around the corner there, we can bring them out to the parking lot, take off our masks, and just continue this discussion if you'd like. So, thank you.